This is the Bartholomew Town Podcast.
And welcome into another edition of the Bartholomew Town Podcast. I'm Bill Bartholomew. Always a pleasure to spend some time with you as we ramp things up heading into election season 2022. Today, I'm joined by Joy Fox, candidate in the 2nd Congressional District race that is jam-packed with Democratic candidates. And, the winner of that primary will likely face Alan Fung unless Bob Lancia pulls off the miracle of the century over there on the Republican side. But this is a key race, of course, along with the gubernatorial race, not to dismiss anything else. I mean, every race is valuable and critical to our democracy, right? But all eyes are really going to be focused on the congressional race along with the gubernatorial race. So as we move along here, we're into May. Happy May. Starting to feel good. Weather's starting to ramp up. Beautiful weekend. Hopefully everyone had a chance to get outside in one way, shape, or form, especially Sunday. Man, what a beautiful day here in Rhode Island. But as we move along, you're going to hear our bread and butter. You're going to hear more and more of the candidates for offices. You're going to hear more and more analysis, reporters' roundtables, other expertise, taking a look at election 2022, right? And of course, we've had plenty of candidates on already this year, but I just want to, think we're getting to that point where we're going to start to ramp it up, and the focus of the podcast we'll still have the other segments, but we're really going to dig into the election. So thanks to our sponsors, Pure Vita Labs and Commonwealth Care Alliance. If you want to get a hold of me, send me an email anytime, bill@ripodcast.com, or tweet at me at Bill Bartholomew. I am seeing your messages, some awesome questions coming through, more so on the gubernatorial side, but I will be reading your emails out loud and asking candidates your questions as we move along as well. Again, that's bill@ripodcast.com. My guest today is a candidate for the Congressional District 2 seat, one of, about 575 people running in the Democratic primary, but somebody who's certainly jumped out in recent times due to, a number of things, your campaign itself, but also a recent Boston Globe column. And that is Joy Fox. Joy, thanks so much for your time.
Hey, thanks for having me here today, Bill. It's great to be with you.
So, let's start with this Boston Globe column. We had scheduled this interview a couple of weeks ago for today. And then on Friday, Dan McGowan wrote that you have something different to bring to the table. In a nutshell, what that means is that you're a longtime, lifelong resident of this district. And that is different than a lot of the candidates in this Democratic primary. And on a specific level, there's some candidates who it's questionable whether or not they even live in the district on any kind of full-time basis or have even a real intimate connection to it. So let's start right there. Just based on your life experience alone, why are you in this race, and what does your connection to Rhode Island and the congressional district itself do to inform the message and the motivation behind your campaign?
Well, I think you hit the nail right on the head there. I am in this race because I believe I can make a difference for my family, my friends, my neighbors, colleagues, folks that I've known my entire life. I have a deep understanding of the challenges facing the people of the Rhode Island 2nd Congressional District. And I also believe that my unique background and perspective make me a different choice in this campaign. Again, I grew up in Cranston. My parents still live in the house that we all grew up in. I'm the oldest of 5 kids and an aunt to 2 nephews and a niece. And I live in Warwick now. I went to Rhode Island College. After Rhode Island College, my first job was covering the community. I was the news editor at the Cranston Herald, did a little bit of reporting in Warwick as well, jumped over into Providence Business News, and spent a short amount of time also at Channel 10 on the assignment desk. And those experiences from having grown up here and talking to family and friends all the time, but also being a part of the community and covering it, gave me a very unique perspective to not only the challenges, but the triumphs. There's a lot of great stuff happening in the district too. Sure, there's a lot of work to do, but there's also so many tremendous things happening that we need to put a spotlight on and draw attention to as well. So that's just a little bit about why I feel I am uniquely qualified here and do present a different choice for the voters of the 2nd District.
What about your life in politics? What's that been like so far?
You mean in these last couple of months?
Well, including these last couple of months, but just in general. I mean, what's your connection to the political world?
Yeah, it's funny. So my connection to the political world is, my parent goes back to my parents, and just them instilling in us a sense of service and civic engagement. So we were always taught to know who our city council people were, and our mayors and congressmen. And it's funny. One of our over-the-fence backyard neighbors was really involved in Democratic city politics when Jack Reed was getting his start. And as a kid, I remember riding my bike around the block and the adults coming out of that house and putting a bunch of door hangers in my bike basket and saying, don't come home until these are gone, and there's an ice cream in it for you. I can't tell you, what happened to those door hangers, but I promise I probably got the ice cream in the end. So, it started that early for me, and understanding that government can make a difference in people's lives, especially if they understand how it works. And you're taking the time to talk about it with folks and meet with folks. Fast forward about 20 years, 30 years from there. My first job in state service was actually for the Rhode Island Department of Corrections. And then from there, spent 5 or so years working for Congressman Jim Langevin, which was a tremendous honor to get to serve along with and work for your hometown congressman. It was a tremendous honor. My time with him was marked by the passage of the Affordable Care Act. That was my first big, huge taste of what it's like to work on important, critical pieces of legislation, not only in Washington, D.C., but bringing it back home and listening to all sides and stakeholders to try and put forward the best bill, not only for Rhode Islanders, but for increasing access and affordability for everyone needing healthcare across the country. And then I did work for Gina Raimondo, both when she was in Treasury and in the governor's office. I ran her transition into the governor's office. And as you and your listeners know, she knew she had a short amount of time and did a lot of things, from infrastructure, economic development, education, you name it. She really did push a lot of things forward. And I was in the room for when those things happen. I don't know who said it first, me or Hamilton at this point, but I've been in the room where it happens. And since leaving government service, I run a small communications firm here in Rhode Island. So I have that small business experience as well.
There's a lot in there, and certainly the experiences themselves are a lot to, just in terms of a resume, but also in shaping your perspective of how, for lack of a better term, how the sausage is made, if that makes sense. So I guess looking at the state of affairs right now, and we can certainly get into specifics, but as the Democratic primary plays out and candidates sort of juxtapose themselves against each other, there's really no question that one major criteria, if not for some people, perhaps the most serious piece of information, would be a matchup against likely Alan Fung in the fall, in November. And look, the National Democratic Party or the National Congressional Caucus and the Democratic and Republican side are making arguments that this election could see a shift in Rhode Island to return to having a Republican represent Congressional District 2. Why are you the best candidate to match up? Let's just say it's going to happen against Alan Fung in November. Yeah.
I appreciate. Yes, let's say it's going to happen, Bill. That's what we're planning on here, and that's what we're working really hard for. Look, I think it goes back to the same thing. I understand deeply the challenges facing this district, and I think it's also time to bring people together for common purpose. I'm not sure he or his party represents that. I think people, if I had to sum up every conversation that I've had in the last couple of months, people are tired because they just say, Joy, how do we make things work? And could you just, knock it off? And I just realized I channeled my former boss there with the knock it off. But they just want things to work and they want things to move forward. And that has been my approach across both government and running a business. Sit down, make a plan, come together, listen to all sides. This isn't about division. This is about making positive change and moving beyond the last couple of years, which have just taken a toll on all of us in so many ways. And I think that message will resonate with people. I know how to get things done. And I know how to bring all sides around a table and have those conversations.
Where do you stand on, well, I guess let's get into a couple of key issues here. Where do you stand in terms of, the priorities of the Congress going forward for the next 2 years? Where do you see the biggest challenges? I mean, we see a crisis potentially brewing around inflation. There's certainly a housing crisis, and that's a bifocal conversation because there's obviously a major housing shortage and rent and purchasing is very expensive, but there's also probably a looming bubble for people who have purchased in the last few years when if prices do reset. What's the major challenge right now in your mind in terms of, I guess, let's start with economics? Yeah.
And that's the thing with Congress, right? Everything to me, all of these issues that you just mentioned are interconnected. You can't tackle one without the other. So let's start with that as my main focal point there. They're putting things into silos now and just doesn't work. So I do believe that this economy will be in transition for a very long time. And what are we doing to make sure that Rhode Island families, Rhode Islanders, and I mean all of us, are positioned to have the opportunities that I had growing up, and to make sure that my nieces, my nephews and niece can stay here and live and raise a family. I know we were just talking the other day, Bill, about how people have left Rhode Island for opportunity and for costs and for everything that you just talked about. So again, I think all roads lead back to the economy. I think we need a comprehensive paid leave policy, and to support folks who need it when they need to take time out of the workforce, that they don't get penalized for that. I think that we need to look at our tax system and make it a more progressive tax rate. I have no problem having billionaires and millionaires pay more. Some people say their fair share. I'd like to go a little bit beyond that. And I think then we also need to look at housing, and all of the other, and workforce development. I think we need to continue to improve our apprenticeship programs, workforce development programs. Again, keeping an eye on the fact that this economy will be in transition. Are we making sure people have the right skills to be able to tackle the economy of the future? And all of this goes back to, I think, moving beyond the pandemic, realizing that shift will continue. And then, attached to that is our healthcare system. Making it more affordable and accessible, but also taking a look at the care that happens outside of the traditional system, outside of the hospitals. That's food insecurity. That, again, goes back to housing. We need more community mental health supports, not only for adults, but for kids. All of these things come together. And if we can figure out a way to comprehensively attack them, I think all Rhode Islanders will be better for it. So lots of things to tackle.
Yeah, there's no question that it's on people's minds in all sectors right now, economics, and it probably will serve as the driving force and in this coming election at all levels. Other major issues right now, I suppose, would be, and the labels are always tough to use. Hey, are you progressive? Do you consider yourself a moderate? Where do you fit in terms of that spectrum? But issues like the Green New Deal, is that something you're in favor of?
I think we do need comprehensive climate reform. I think we're behind the eight ball. I think we're behind the eight ball in terms of transitioning in an equitable way, transitioning our economy in an equitable way. And I think we're behind the eight ball when it comes to a matter of our health. Again, both inside the traditional system of hospitals and doctors' offices, but also looking at clean water, clean air, our housing stock. Especially in New England, it's aging. There's more we need to do to bring that up to code. And I also think it's funny, when I think about the economy and the transition that I was talking about earlier, 20 years ago, it was kind of novel to have an IT person on staff. I think our economy is shifting to a point where we're probably going to need climate people who understand resiliency and risk on teams as well, from not only the business side, but also the nonprofit side, and our community leaders really taking it seriously. I was talking to someone the other day. I think it's the city of Miami that has a chief heat officer now.
Yeah.
For how to combat, the rising temperatures. So I think we can't work fast enough to move forward on a full court press on everything related to climate.
Do you see yourself as going into Congress with an aggressive mindset, as in, hey, we need to make serious changes? A lot of people in my district are struggling in one way, shape, or form. I'm willing to put my political career on the line to be that, more aggressive personality? Or do you see it as, hey, look, you've got to get there and sort of find your footing and work within the institutions to make changes over the long term?
That's an interesting question. And I go for a little bit of both. Mm-hmm. We have really pressing issues. And I'll be a fighter for Rhode Island families. That's what they expect from us. And that's what we need to do. And especially around those economic issues that I talked about, from paid leave in particular, and how can we support working Rhode Islanders to have the opportunity that they need to live and work here. But I also, this is where my experience comes in. I have been in those rooms. I know how it works. I know how to get things done. Sometimes you don't need to be the loudest voice, but I'm also not shying away from being the loudest voice, because to me, at the end of the day, it's about results and how are we going to achieve those results. So I think it's a little bit of everything. And it's not lost on me that I would be the junior member of this delegation. And there is a lot of wisdom there. I think Rhode Island punches above its weight when it comes to having a national profile, but also making sure that those funding streams continue coming back into the state. And I look forward to rolling up my sleeves next to them as well.
Have you had a chance to talk to any or all of the 4 members of our congressional delegation about your race?
I have, yeah. No, I've talked to many, many people, including them. Yeah, no, this has been a tremendous experience for not only talking to old friends, but meeting new ones as well, like you, Bill, and having these conversations, because that's the plan here, is to have as many conversations as I can in the coming weeks and months.
Rhode Island and national politics, media, arts, and newsmakers. Bartholomew Town with Bill Bartholomew, Saturdays at 3 p.m. on News Talk 99.7 FM and AM 630 WPRO.
Now back to B-Town.
Why is it important, if it is important, and I think it certainly is, but why would it be important for a woman to be in this position?
I think, again, it goes to a different perspective and having a unique set of qualifications and just coming in with a different angle on things. I mean, the data shows the more diversity you have around the table, the better decision-making becomes, and that only benefits Rhode Islanders. I would be tremendously honored to be the first Democratic woman to represent Rhode Island in Congress. It would just be a tremendous, tremendous honor to earn that support from the voters. But I'm also more focused on, how do I take my lived experience and put it to good work and use, and listening to everyone here in Rhode Island and bringing their thoughts and perspectives down to DC.
There's a moment right now in Rhode Island that is pretty interesting. We have Providence with the Superman building and Kennedy Plaza, the 195 land, sort of in transition. In Newport, there's really a major housing crisis and an Airbnb crisis that's sort of being dialed in. We see changes around the state. Rhode Island became a bit of a hub for folks during the pandemic from New York or Boston or really wherever to move and have a remote environment that was a little bit more appealing, perhaps more affordable. That's good and bad, because we see with the Pawtucket Central Falls train station, how that could lead to gentrification. So from a national standpoint, looking at Rhode Island, how do you balance Rhode Island as a driver of the blue economy, as a hub for people who are in tech and other sectors that want to work remotely or work on a hybrid basis in New York, Boston, DC, wherever. But at the same time, as we're building this quote unquote new Rhode Island, what can you do as a congressperson to ensure that the old Rhode Island doesn't get left behind or potentially destroyed as this moment continues to unfold?
I think it goes back to everything that we've just touched on. This economy is in transition. And what are we doing for lifelong Rhode Islanders like myself, like you, to make sure that they have access to the opportunities that can help them take advantage of that economic shift in a good way. And I do think it starts with our littlest learners, things like universal pre-K, but it also starts with making sure those families are supported with affordable childcare. Again, it goes back to paid leave and making sure that our Pell Grants are remaining competitive. It's supporting our college system, our public education system in the state in particular. As a graduate of Rhode Island College, I'm lucky. I actually, between scholarships, a string of part-time jobs, and an affordable tuition, was able to graduate without debt. I know I am not your usual suspect when it comes to that. And that's not right, because everyone deserves to have that opportunity. And then straight on up after college, again, those apprenticeship programs, those workforce development programs. I think another part of this office that we haven't touched on yet is constituent services. It's the least glamorous part of this job, I think, but could be invaluable to Rhode Islanders in terms of bringing Congress into the community so that everyone knows what these offices do and have access to those resources and understanding and support navigating the benefits that are available to everyone, whether you're a small business person or a veteran or someone needing help navigating, SNAP benefits or something. There's more for this office to do to connect people across Rhode Island to, quite frankly, money that we've already fought for and already won, and it's there for use. And we know that those programs in particular, they don't go, they don't go into savings accounts. They go right back into our economy. And what are we doing to make sure to make those connections for people? I also think, again, with our aging housing stock and the Housing Trust Fund, making sure that has that is funded adequately so that we can rebuild, retrofit housing here as well for affordable housing for all sorts of families in Rhode Island.
This is kind of an odd question, and it sort of touches on what you...
Thanks for the preface.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, hello. Oh, the Zoom call just disconnected. What do you know?
Sure. I'll take an odd question. Odd question for 100, Alex.
Here it comes. Everyone's unique. Our state is extremely diverse in so many different ways, from north to south, from east to west, from Block Island to Burrillville, Narragansett to Nasonville. It's unique. But how would you describe the average Rhode Islander in Congressional District 2? What are they looking for? What do they want? What do they need in an ambassador? How can you collectively represent that person?
That's a good question. It's funny. It reminds me of a conversation I had many years ago with a reporter where they said it was election season and he wanted to get out into the community. And he said, Joy, where should I go? Where can I find that Democrat and that Republican, in your neighborhood? And I said, gosh, you know what you're going to find are people who just want things to work. And he didn't believe me. And he went out into the community, and I saw him. The next time I saw him, he says, you know what? I went to that barber shop. I went to that coffee shop. I went to the places you told me to. And you're right. It wasn't about politics. It was about, I just am trying to find the best person to represent me to get the job done. And I think my lived experience from all the places that you just mentioned, from I'll try and do you one better, from like Westerly to Situate to
there you go.
to back down to South Kingstown. It's a matter of listening, taking all that into account, and then having that understanding of where people are coming from. Because I've been there, my family has been there, my friends, my neighbors. I've been out in the community just today, in fact, and every person to a T was talking about education. And, when you walk into a new room like that and talking to people, you never know what's going to come up. But today it's like, gosh, upon reflection, how do we make it work? And the it today was education. Yeah. So it's out there. And so I think it's my experience, just understanding and knowing the people here so well.
Last question here as we wrap up. Joy Fox running for Congress in Congressional District 2. When you're in Washington and, you just kind of, you're at a restaurant or whatever scenario and someone says, hey, Rhode Island, that's part of New York, right? That's that like peninsula that's attached to New York City. And, and then you correct them. And then they said, well, tell me what's the best thing about Rhode Island? What do you tell them?
Everything. That's the hardest question you've asked, Bill, actually.
Yeah.
I hope it's coming. I absolutely love where I live. It's everything from our gorgeous coastline to our restaurants to community leaders who just understand and make the fabric of our community stronger. There is no better place to live. I truly believe. And it's funny. Usually when I have those conversations, because Rhode Island, I believe, is the center of the universe,
yep.
Within 10 seconds, we have made connections, and it's like how many degrees of separation. It's funny. Once people focus on, yes, it's not part of something else, that it is its own place. People, there's an affection out there. And I think that is what helps us be successful when we're up against the bigger states, especially advocating for things in Washington. So I tell them just about everything is great about Rhode Island. So come on up.
Joy Fox running for Congressional District 2 in the Democratic primary. And look, it's election season, things ramping up. I'm sure we'll be talking again soon.
I'd love that, Bill. Thanks a lot for your time.
Right. Rhode Island's podcast of record, B-Town.
At HealthSource RI for Employers, we provide access to health insurance to more than 1,100 local businesses and nonprofits, and 96% of them renew through us every year. Maybe it's our choice of 19 different health plans, our 10 years of customizing solutions, or our one local team of dedicated experts helping employers find quality health insurance. See how our numbers stack up for you. Learn more at healthsourceri.com/employers.